right. What's good, everyone? My name is Casey Crutchfield, and welcome to episode 41 of Enjoy Life. Before you get started here today, please hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to leave a comment. Truly appreciate all the feedback. But without further ado, my guest today, he's the owner of Evolve Rehab and Recovery, a great friend of mine, Mr. Blake Barbera.
Appreciate you having me, man. Everything's good. Of course.
So, how's everything going today, man?
Everything's good, man. It's cold outside.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It's a beautiful day.
This weather is crazy how it would be 80 degrees one day, and now, like, we're in the 20s and 30s.
80 degrees on Saturday and 25 on Thursday. Yeah. So, gotta love South Louisiana.
Yeah. But thank you so much for coming. Time is very valuable, so I appreciate having you over here. But let's just roll into it. I know you're from Thibodaux and everything, so just kind of tell me what was that childhood like, growing up in Thibodaux?
Yeah, so I was actually born, my dad was in the Army. I was born in Germany. A fun fact, most people don't know. So I was born on a military base in Nuremberg, Germany, and I was there until I was 2 when they moved back, and then my present life has been here ever since. So yeah, man, growing up was awesome. I grew up on the west side of Thibodaux on Wisteria Drive, which is one street over from Lee Drive.
Okay.
And Lee Drive was the spot to grow up. We had about 9 or 10 boys all in the same age that grew up within one block of each other. So you can imagine
I'm sure a lot of bike rides.
Our nights and weekends were nothing but bike riding and playing basketball, baseball in the fields, doing all the things and keeping ourselves busy until the streetlights came on, really. I don't think most people let their kids do that nowadays.
I was going to say that. It's crazy. I don't think you see any bike riding or...
It's scooters now, man.
Yeah,
a
lot of scooters now.
Electric something, It's funny. I don't feel old, but, as the years pass, you really think about what you would always hear your grandparents say is the good old days, right? And that's what it's starting to feel like for me.
No, I understand that for sure.
No more bikes. No more bikes really around. But, yeah, we love bikes, man. I would ride my bike from the west side of town, which is almost all the way by the sugar mill over there. And I would ride all the way to the country club to play golf or to visit friends. Yeah. And just follow the back roads. And
it's crazy because, I feel like kids would just go to friends' houses and maybe the parents really wouldn't know. But, nowadays, I feel like every parent.
And look, I did that without a cell phone.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
I would ride my bike 4 miles all the way across town, no cell phone. Just call me when you get there.
Yeah. Call them house phone.
And if I forgot and I took an hour to call them, they weren't calling the cops wondering where I was.
Now it's Life 360.
Yeah, it's different now, man. It's very different. It's interesting. I got a 1.5-year-old, and so I'm anxiously awaiting the stress and anxiety and worry that's going to come as he keeps getting older and older and exposed to more and more.
And I feel like, because obviously I'm far away from having kids, but they say kids change your life, and
they do, man. This is my first, and I used to come home and I could work until 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night and not think about it. And now I come home and I exhaust myself keeping up with him for a few hours, and by the time he goes to bed, I wonder if I can kick it back in gear to do it again, you know, and it's definitely a challenge. But just like anything, it's got its ups and downs, but more ups and downs, and so it's all good.
Mm-hmm. And so kind of moving on, tell me, so how did you kind of get into physical therapy, and was that something that you were always interested in?
Yeah, physical therapy for me, like a lot of therapists, I think, started when I just had to go to therapy myself in high school. So in high school, I played I ran cross country and then played soccer. I dabbled in basketball a little bit. Which actually is probably my favorite sport to play.
Really?
But I, short in stature. I had a couple guards ahead of me that, were just a touch better and maybe a little bit better if they watch this. But it was like the path to soccer was a little bit easier for me. And so despite loving basketball and wanting to play basketball more, I stuck with that. And so, I injured my leg. I tore this quad, my right quad in high school. And therapy was a lot different back then. Just would get Coach Barbera to wrap that thing up and just keep on kicking a ball with a torn quad like nothing happened, you know. So I did a little bit of therapy during high school, and that's kind of what kind of piqued my interest, I guess, if you will. And as I got into college, it was, well, where am I going to go? What do I want to do? What do I want my life to look like? And I didn't want to be in a job where I was stuck behind a desk.
Yeah, I think that's my case too. Like,
and that was, you know, I actually, it took me 5 years to get out of college. So if you're on the 5-year track, like, it's not the end of the world.
It's just a victory lap.
That's right. Look, my first year was just kind of like figuring it out. Like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I was actually in the business administration route initially. My dad was a businessman and a banker, and so, you know, that's what I saw growing up, and I was like, all right, this might be where I want to go. And I just realized that I didn't know what a business degree would bring, you know, without any like clear direction or job waiting for me. And so I tried to create that path by going into therapy and doing something that I knew I would enjoy. And so that's kind of what got me down that path in terms of my own injuries and experience in therapy for myself.
And what was it like first getting into that? Was there any like second thoughts, or you just kind of knew like immediately, okay, like I can do this?
So in college, I worked as a lot of physical therapy students or aspiring physical therapy students do. I worked in a physical therapy clinic, and to be honest, I wasn't really sure because physical therapy clinics can be so different. You know, you can have.
Which one was it?
So at the time, I was working for Advanced Physical Therapy, which is still here in town. Jason Jones is the owner there. So I worked with and Chet Sternfels at Advanced Physical Therapy. You think you know what a field is, and physical therapy is definitely one of those where it can take you in a million different directions. Like, physical therapy is not just the traditional clinics that you see, you know, on a regular basis for those that injure themselves. There's neurological rehab, there's inpatient rehab, there's acute care rehab, there's pediatric rehab. And as a physical therapist, you have to learn all those things in school. You don't get to just choose, I want to be an orthopedic physical therapist. And so, you know, you have this vision of what you picture the field to be like. And over time, that vision maybe changes a little bit. But yeah, that was my first experience as like working in the field, if you will, as a tech. And then off to school I went. Yeah.
And so before, you know, off to school, what were some of those like extracurricular things you like to do? Because obviously, you know, throughout that time of college, it can't just be school.
No. So for me, the biggest extracurricular was Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, so SAE, which you know very well. So me and a group of buddies decided that we actually most of our dads were PKTs.
That's what Mr. Nick would always talk about. It seems like they are like the unknown.
So PKT was what my dad was in at Nichols with some other, you know, prominent guys in the community, and they tried to push us to revitalize PKT, and we just felt like, you know, we're just going to do something different. And so SAE became, for the most of us, our life for, you know, 3 or 4 years, however long I guess I was in SAE for 4 years, because we started at the end of my freshman year, beginning of my sophomore year. And so that was most of my extracurriculars. Now, with that came, you know, the sports aspect, the intramurals, all those kind of things that we enjoyed doing. But yeah, that's kind of how my college life went, if you will. Just building from the start. I mean, I felt like college was a great experience for me and all my friends, all my fraternity brothers that got to go through that building process of learning what it takes to be a team, what it takes to all like pull your own weight to create, you know, something that we all envisioned. And it's always very, I guess, exciting to look back and see the chapter still thriving 20 years later now. We're 20 years out, which is, I'm really showing my age.
And something that I find, like one thing I'll always be blessed for is just like everyone you meet, because, you know, coming into college, I don't know, like being at EDY, you have your friends and, you know, you've been with them for so long.
That's right.
And just like getting the opportunity to meet people from south of Foosh and Vanderbilt and just all these other schools, you know, when you're at EDY, you think Vanderbilt is like the evil thing.
That's
But
right,
you
the
get
rival.
into college, and it's just like half of my friends now are from Vanderbilt, and they'll probably walk in my wedding. So
No.
it's just awesome to like meet all those guys.
Yeah, and that was honestly that for me. That was part of what made college so much more enjoyable. Is had I not done the fraternity, I like just like you, I probably wouldn't have met the guys that would play such an integral role in my life. Even some guys that were from EDY that I just wasn't, you know, close with in high school, who became some of my best friends today. But really, truthfully, it's the guys not from EDY, not from Thibodaux, that really shaped our fraternity in so many ways, because we don't realize as kids in high school how sheltered we maybe are, especially in small town Thibodaux, right? And so having those different perspectives was probably the most important part of, you know, what shaped SAE.
Yeah. And so after Nichols, obviously, we go to physical therapy. Was it always St. Aug in mind, or did you, because think about it, you know, you've been in Thibodaux, and Thibodaux's a small town. In Florida, it's pretty far.
It's a little ways away. Yeah. It's a 9-hour drive. No, truthfully. So now the landscape of school for physical therapy has changed drastically in the last 15 years. So when I was coming out, there was only LSU in Louisiana. So, St. Aug was one of those schools that had a great reputation as a manual therapy school. So I enjoy that. I'm not a research guy. Like, I don't want to like be in the lab just punching numbers and, you know, going through these protocols and figuring stuff out. And that's what state schools require you to do, because that's where a lot of their, I guess, it's just the way the state schools run. And so you go to LSU and you've got research to do. You've got to, you know, do these things. And I just always thought, like, man, it'd be nice to go to school where I can learn the skills, the hands-on skills. That's more important than doing, you know, the other stuff, the school side, you know. And so yeah, that's why St. Aug was such a attractive place for me, and it allowed me to get out of here for a little while. And
did you want to leave? Because I know some people like to stay, or, you know, like to stay around, but like I said, Florida's pretty far. Did you kind of enjoy that? Like, okay, I'm gonna get a fresh scene.
Yeah, man. I tell everybody, if you can get out of Louisiana, get out.
Yeah.
Not forever. It doesn't mean you have to leave forever. But, you know, we talked about the bubble of Thibodaux, but there's a broader bubble of South Louisiana that people, you know, don't even realize they're in until they go somewhere else, you know. And so spending that time in Florida for school and then staying to work and so forth and so on was like such an enlightening time for me to just like kind of find who I was, who I am, without having the identity of, I'm Blake Barbera from Thibodaux, who went to EDY, who went to Nichols. My dad is over here. Like, this is, you know, what my life is supposed to be, right? And I was able to just kind of get out and explore, see how things ran outside of small Louisiana, and come back, you know, with a different perspective than I think most people have, which is not better or worse than, you know, anybody who doesn't leave, but I just think it gives you different perspective on the world and life in general.
And so what was it like there, like when you first got there?
So St. Aug is, for those that don't know, St. Augustine is on the east coast of Florida, the very northern part of the peninsula, east of Jacksonville on the coast. St. Augustine is the oldest town in America. So it's like got a lot of historical value there. A lot of just like cool, like old town vibes. It's actually very Spanish, which is very similar to New Orleans. And it's a beach town, so we had a lot of fun. We had almost 30 people in our class from Louisiana, so we had a lot of fun in terms of rooting for LSU and throwing tailgate parties, just like you would here, you know. And so we brought Louisiana there a little bit, and that really helped, honestly, like it feel like home for some of those, you know, highlights, especially the Saints Super Bowl in 2009.
That had to be awesome.
So that was fun. Yeah, we had a great time that day and night. It was awesome. an awesome time. And then the school itself is it's something else, man. PT school is not for the faint of heart. I don't think people really understand like the breadth of knowledge and the difficulty it is in going through that education. It's typically 3 years of school, and you're in class from 8 to 5 days a week. And then you got to go home after sitting in the classroom, and you got to study and, be prepared. And you do that for 3 years straight. And it's challenging. And, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's so many different avenues of being a therapist in different fields, different subsets, if you will, of the field, that you just have to know it all. It doesn't matter if you don't care about pediatric care and it's not what you want to do, you have to learn it, and so it's a lot, it's difficult, and that's part of why they've transitioned it to a doctorate, is because of the breadth of knowledge that you have to have in order to graduate.
I know it seems like a lot because, we have our grad school, but going to class from 8 to 5 is 5 days a week. It's
a grind. Yeah. It is a grind, but the other thing that, I think some perspective that maybe people don't realize is everything in medicine has become so specialized now. Mm-hmm. So like at some point in our life, we all have a primary care physician. We have an orthopedist that we see. We have there's special orthopedists for different parts of the body. Yeah. Right. We have heart doctors, we have kidney doctors, we have, ear, nose, and throat doctors. And so they all go to med school, and then they all get specialized in one area that they just have to be really good at. Yeah. Chiropractors predominantly treat the spine. Physical therapists, man, like do it all. I could treat a neck at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I can treat a big toe, in the evening, and anything in between. And you're just expected to know how to treat it. Yeah. And so, they're especially in the orthopedic world. And so it's challenging because we have a lot of bones, a lot of muscles, a lot of moving parts. And if you have to know it all, it's a lot different than just needing to know what to do with the one shoulder or the knee. Yeah. And so it's what keeps it interesting, though, right? Yeah. Every day is a little bit different.
And so did you find like it went by fast?
School went by fast. It did. In the last 14 years, I think I'm going by faster. But no, school, look, anytime you're that busy, like it does kind of fly by because you're just in the grind of just getting through each day. And to be honest, I think like a lot of us would get sick, like whenever the semester finished, because we were in this fight or flight constantly. And then when you finally let your body breathe, is when, dang, you didn't like coming down. One time you get a break, it's like, something. Because your body's like, we're done, we're crashing, and you're gonna like relax on the couch for 3 days while we recover. No, definitely. Yeah, but no, it was a fun time of life, even though it was stressful and difficult and hectic.
Yeah, no, definitely. I bet that was a great experience.
Yeah, no.
And so after, obviously you didn't come straight back. You said you worked there for a little while.
Yeah, so I graduated PT school in 2011, and I didn't move back to Louisiana until midway through 2016. So, so I stayed in Florida. I did travel therapy for a year where I jumped around in different spots and kind of worked in places that needed a temporary therapist. So I did that in Southwest Florida, and then I actually went and I lived in San Antonio for about 6 months, and I worked there in a clinic there for 6 months. And then after that, I moved back to South Florida in Delray Beach, and I worked in Boca Raton down there for almost 4 years. Wow. So stayed there, enjoyed the life, lived the South Florida life for a few years, and then eventually I was like, all right, it's time to come home. Well, for me, it was time to move my career forward. And in therapy, it's a lot about relationships, especially in the insurance world. And so, having relationships with physicians or with, other members of the community is important if you're going to have your own practice. And there I was in a family practice. And so there was not any room for growth within the practice. And then the question became, if I was going to grow my career and move it forward, was I going to branch out in that location and basically commit myself to being there forever, right? Once you start a business somewhere, you're not stuck, but you commit
for
yourself. Yeah. And it was like, well, I don't know that this is where I'd want to raise a family if I got to that point. So where do I go that I can build the connections or have the connections and start to at least move in that direction?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led me back home.
Yeah. And just curious, before we talk about that and coming back home, what was your favorite place that you stayed?
In terms of living, like during that time,
just like total like experience. Like if you can look back at it and pick one place that you really liked.
Man, honestly, it probably was Delray Beach. Delray Beach was so. The cool part about the East Coast of Florida is all the towns are just stacked on top of each other, right? So it's just like a rectangular town and another one on top, and you just keep following it along. So Delray Beach was one above Boca Raton. So my house in Delray was a 5-minute drive to Boca.
Yeah.
But I was also like 40 minutes to Miami, and I was like 25 minutes to Fort Lauderdale, and I was 25 minutes to West Palm Beach. Wow. So truthfully, I could do the whole coast.
Yeah.
I was maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours or so to Orlando. So,
how old were you at the time?
So at this, where was I? I was probably between 28 and 30, 28 and 32, somewhere in that range.
So I bet that was like, obviously you're kind of getting your feet wet after school. But obviously, like, that's just a good experience, at a young age to just be able to go see different places.
That's right. No, it was awesome. I mean, I got to see so many things in Florida. Florida honestly feels like home to me.
Yeah.
It's very, I love Florida. Like when I drive into Florida and I see the sign, welcome to Florida, like I feel like I'm going home. I truthfully do. And so, my family is here, and that's a big part of why I'm here. But I love it there. And that was a place that I'll always go back to and have a different feeling than anywhere else in the world. There's some great places in the world that I've been to that I love, but Florida just has that special place in my heart because it was a place that I lived for the most part, by myself, and I made some really good friends there, and grew up in different ways than I would have ever grown up, being just coddled with family here in some way,
And so coming back to Thibodaux, what was that like, and what was like the first thing kind of?
So coming back to Thibodaux was interesting because I wasn't sure that I wanted to be in Thibodaux. I had been in Florida. I had lived in South Florida. I had, been in a place where there was always a restaurant open every night of the week. Yeah. There was always something to do. I could bowl. I could go down to South Beach. I could go to West Palm. I could drive just past West Palm, and there was a concert series where I could see Dave Matthews Band and all these country artists every weekend.
Wow.
For like $35,
that.
Yeah, you go drive to the amphitheater. It's changed the name so many times. I don't know what it's called today, but, there was a concert series for 8 to 12 weeks in the summertime. And so every weekend go see a different concert. And so coming back home to Louisiana was can I make that transition to Thibodaux where, you really don't have a whole lot going on, So my thought was I really like to be in the city where there's more to do, whether that's New Orleans, Baton Rouge, wherever, just somewhere. And ultimately I got to a place where when I moved back, it was again, I'm coming back for my career, to try and move that forward. I didn't find an opportunity in the city that I really thought would move me forward. It would just be like a lateral move to be home. Mm-hmm. And so I made a decision to stay here from a business standpoint over going live my social life that I maybe would have enjoyed more at 32 in New Orleans. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I ended up back in Thibodaux, and here we are 7-8 years later, and I'm here, and now I have a business here.
Yeah. And so you started at Core before
So when I first moved back, I actually worked for I worked with Jason Jones and Chet Sternfels, who I was with in college. So I joined up with them. I was working for, at the time, was Advanced Physical Therapy in Morgan City.
Okay.
And then at some point during my time there, they split, and that's when Core was created as the branch off of Chet and Jason from Advanced.
Okay.
And so then I stayed there for close to 5 years or so. But all of my time, for the most part, was spent in Morgan City, which, look, I love Morgan City. I love the clinic there. I loved working with Chet and the people. But what that didn't allow me to do was reacclimate to Thibodaux a whole bunch, right? Because every day I was on the road at 7 and I was getting home at 6. And so that meant I didn't really get a chance when I moved back to Thibodaux to reintegrate myself into the city and
that's what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's really what I wanted to do. And so that was difficult. You know, there were people that still today that think I still live in Florida. You know, they're like, oh, you know, are you back? Are you still in Florida? I'm like, no, actually, I've been back for 7 years. And part of them not knowing is like me not being around. Yeah, I'm not coming back, driving home from a 12-hour day and, you know, going out on a Thursday night. I was tired, you know, and so having a business now in Thibodaux kind of affords me the opportunity to kind of be more involved in the community and feel like I develop more relationships than I could when I was commuting to Morgan City and spending a lot of my time building relationships there, really.
And so tell me about your business, Evolve, and kind of the start of building that. I mean, I'm sure you've kind of always had that idea that you wanted to open up your own in the back of your head. So tell me about actually putting that into...
So, man, Evolve, you're right. I always had that in the back of my head. It was always a goal of mine, even from the day I went to PT school. I didn't go to PT school to come out and work for somebody for the rest of my life.
Exactly.
You know, I had built the fraternity with the help of a lot of other guys. I was involved with a startup tech company in college as well that we didn't really touch on. We don't need to touch on it, but that was another like building block of building a business from the ground up. And so I just had a lot of experience doing that, and it's something that I really enjoy. I'm currently in the process of feeling like I'm building another business we'll touch on later. And so that for me was always going to happen. And at some point, you know, down the line when I was at Core, was just like, all right, like the insurance model had frustrated me in terms of like how we had to treat patients, how many patients we had to see, and like how I could dedicate my time to the patients is really what kind of drove me to say like, all right, not only do I want to have a business, but I want to do something different than what, you know, the system affords, not just me as a clinician, but like the patient. You know, when it comes to insurance is in the business of making money. They're not in the business of paying good providers.
Right.
And so because of that, they don't pay physical therapists a whole bunch. And because they don't pay us a whole bunch as a profession, we have to see more people in order to make money. And I know maybe people hear that as like, well, why do you need to make so much money? And if I could break it down to people very simply, like physical therapists are not like wealthy people in terms of there is the potential to make a lot of money and live a good life. But if you think of it very simply, the average reimbursement rate for a patient is $85 an hour. Okay. So if you're Casey coming to see me and I can charge you $85 an hour as a business owner, like out of that 85, like not only am I paying, let's say 30% in taxes out of that 85, but I've also got to pay my overhead out of that 85. So as a business owner, what am I really making out of 85 an hour?
Yeah.
Right. Maybe I'm making $40 an hour. Now, is that like more acceptable?
Yeah.
Like everybody wants to make more than $40 an hour, right?
Exactly.
So then if I have to see 2 of Casey's, now that's $170 an hour. But if I'm going to see 2 of you, then I probably need help, right? So I need a receptionist. So now I'm adding more cost on top of my initial expenses in order to have a receptionist to greet the second person in the door while I work with the first. And so you can see how it snowballs into a place where now I need to see 4 people an hour because now I have a receptionist and I have a tech who's helping me. and I have my bills to pay, and I have insurance, and I got to pay my staff's insurance. And next thing you know, you're like spinning your wheels to see more people in order just to make what you feel like is acceptable, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to go to school and spend $100,000 on school, like you should make $100,000. You should probably make $200,000, right? And in order to do that, you've got to see a large volume of people in the insurance world. And so I don't fault those therapists that are doing that, because it literally is like, how do I pay the bills, right? In the system. And for me, as a therapist who worked in the system for 10 years, or maybe a little longer, before I did my own thing, as a therapist, man, it was very frustrating, because I knew I had 2, 3, 4 coming in per hour. And what that meant was I had to choose every hour who I was going to spend my time with, you know? And I might really like you as a person, Casey, and you're doing great in therapy, but, you know, Miss Sheila over here is in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And she doesn't frankly care to get better. She's just here for me to rub on her back and make her feel better, and that's it. But if you're doing well and she's in miserable pain, like, how am I going to choose who to spend my time with, right? And that was a frustrating choice every day of the week, every hour of the day.
Do you, I hate to cut you off, but do you find like people that come in, do they want to see you because, like, you know, you're the person who owns it? Like, because the other ones go to the tech, you said, right?
Yeah, so what happens is most people just fall in line with the system.
Okay.
I'm talking about patients, right? So you walk in, you greet the receptionist, they will take you back whenever it's your time. And the therapist generally will spend 10 or 15 minutes with each patient.
Okay.
And that's a good chunk of time. Sometimes it's less, right?
Right.
If she's over here in a lot of pain and you've gotten through all your exercise and you feel good, I might not see you at all. I might just tell you hello and, hey, you doing good? Yeah, okay. And that's the extent of it, right? And so I think most patients just understand that's the way the system works. And my whole goal was to, like, give people a different option.
Right.
You know, and so that's where Evolve came from, in terms of just trying to figure out, how do I enjoy what I'm doing more and provide a higher quality service to patients who want it? And it's not for everybody. You know, I'm out of the insurance world. I don't take insurance. It's all pay up front, you know, but you know what the cost is. And so if you want a higher quality of care, more attention to detail, then I'm who you're going to see, basically.
And so what was it like initially starting it out?
It was difficult.
So take me through like those kind of early challenges.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're starting a business, you got to, you know, figure out what you want to call it.
Yeah.
And I always think several steps ahead. I'm not just thinking about today. And so as I'm thinking about what do I want to name this practice, I spent probably 3 months thinking about it.
Oh, wow.
And just like, you know, Googling names, Googling adjectives, trying to figure out different meanings of different words. What can I have that's going to be meaningful, that's going to be understandable, that's going to be marketable? And like, how do I want to like word the name in a place that like people can identify with at some point in time, right? Not on day one, but later down the road. And so you see a lot of physical therapy practices that are named, or not just physical therapy, but medicine, like named for the person.
Yeah.
Barbera physical therapy, or, you know, whatever it might be. And there were two things that I didn't want. I didn't want my name in the name.
And you didn't want physical therapy.
And I didn't want physical therapy in the name. Because I'm trying to offer something different. I'm trying to offer something that people don't associate with traditional physical therapy. So the last thing I wanted was people to see physical therapy on a sign and automatically assume what it is my business is, right? So that's where rehab and recovery came in.
Yeah.
Now, I ran into a little trouble. People thought I was like an addiction facility for a little while. They're like, "Oh, do you do drug and alcohol?" And I'm like, no. It's not that kind of rehab, right? So, you know, that little bit of challenge there in terms of, you know, making sure that got cleared up. But that was kind of where the Evolve name came from. Evolve just means like a shortened term of evolution and changing the field and doing something different and progressing. So, but initially, man, it was It was interesting. So I opened and lifted inside of Lifted Gym on Tiger Drive. I have a small space in there that I basically treat out of, and then I have access to the gym. So that was a nice way for me to, not have to outfit a whole facility of equipment and, take an enormous loan out in order to fund the equipment side aside from just operating expenses.
Yeah.
But it took some time. I mean, people didn't know what I did. They didn't understand how they could not use their insurance to come see me. I had to figure out, and frankly, I'm still figuring out, like, how do I market to people and teach them why, not using insurance is more beneficial.
Yeah.
And so that's still something that I struggle with, I feel like, every day, because people's attention spans on advertisements or social media is like 5 seconds, right? So how do I deliver that message in 5 seconds? Yeah. Or how do I hook them in, right? And I'm not a dishonest person. I'm not a overselling type of person. And so it's hard sometimes to be myself, be genuine, but also try and grab their attention, traditional physical therapy is terrible. Do you want to hear about it? No, that's not who I am, right? I don't think that's the case. And that's not how I'm going to try and market or brand myself. But it has been one of the business challenges of how do I truly market this? Because in traditional physical therapy with insurance, they really don't have to market, right? Nobody knows what physical therapist in town unless you have a relationship with them, or until you go to the doctor and you need one, they give you an option of where to go.
Yeah.
Those businesses are for the most part fed by the insurance system. My business is fed by word of mouth. 90% of my referrals are word of mouth.
Okay.
1% are physician referrals.
Wow.
So I don't have the luxury
of just being recommended
by a physician who sees countless patients every single day. So it's different, but I wouldn't trade it because ultimately my goal is to treat people and work with people who want to be helped.
Okay.
And so that's, people seek me to help them, and more often than not, they're ready to be helped, which is, a huge piece of the puzzle to actually get better.
And can I ask, in your opinion, why do you think going the non-insurance route, what are the benefits of doing it that way?
For me or for the patient?
For the patient.
For the patient, the benefit is this. So there's two different ways to look at this. One is financially, why is it beneficial? And then from a treatment standpoint, why is it beneficial? From a financial situation, why is it beneficial? Well, insurance deductibles have skyrocketed. Our insurance costs have skyrocketed. And so most people have a relatively high deductible. And if you're a relatively healthy person who has a relatively high deductible, the likelihood of you hitting that deductible is very unlikely, right? And so if you're going to go to physical therapy under your insurance, what a lot of people don't realize, especially if they haven't been to therapy or haven't utilized their insurance a whole bunch, is you might have a $50 copay to physical therapy. Some of those copays are even higher now, which is crazy. But what happens is you're going to pay your $50 every time you go. Excuse me. And, but inevitably you're responsible for 100% of the cost until you hit your deductible. So if your deductible is $3,000, and you go to physical therapy 3 times a week, you're going to pay $50 3 times a week for a month. Let's just say 1 month. So that's $600 in copays. Then you're going to get a bill in 6 to 8 weeks once everything's going through the system and insurance kicks it back to you to pay for the remainder of that cost, which could be another $100 to $150 per visit.
Oh, wow.
So now you've paid your $50 weekly, which is already $600 for 1 month. And oh, by the way, you're going to get a bill for the remainder of that cost, which now could be another, I don't want to do the math in my head, but $1,000, $1,500. And so now you're $2,100 in, you haven't hit your deductible potentially, and you've only done a month of therapy.
Wow.
So, that reality is challenging. I mean, the benefit is, well, I'm closer to my deductible. And that's fine. If you're somebody who's going to hit it every year because you got all these medical issues, well, then sure, go by and large, go use it.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who's hitting your deductible annually because you have all these medical issues, then either you need to consider seeing somebody different, to kind of help manage your medical stuff, because clearly it's not working, or you probably should just go use the insurance and not come see me, which is fine. I get it. I understand that. I'm a parent, and again, we talked about it, like, just because you own a business doesn't mean you have $1 million and all this money floating around, right? So I get crunching the numbers too, and sometimes it's just not reasonable. So that's the money side. Like, the benefit to working with me is on day one what it's going to cost you.
Yeah.
If you work with me for 6 months, 4 months, 2 months, 2 weeks, whatever it is, you know exactly what it's going to cost you on day one, and you know exactly what you're going to get from me, which is my undivided attention every time you're with me and all throughout the week. And so that's the benefit, is like, all right, do I want to pay out of pocket for care that I know is going to be in many cases better, or do I want to just utilize my insurance? I can't answer that question for people. All I can do is like try and say, like, hey,
show you both sides.
Yeah, here's both sides of it. If you feel like insurance is what's best for you in your situation, then so be it. I mean, it's fine. I don't fault anybody for using it, especially if you've had a procedure, right?
Right.
You go have a knee scope and you hit your deductible with the scope. Well, go do traditional therapy. That therapy is free at this point, right?
Right.
That's a different scenario, which is why for the last 2.5 years, I probably have only seen 2 or 3 post-op people.
Okay.
Right, because in that scenario, they have insurance, it's free to use, they may as well go use it, and I don't blame them for that.
And one thing I admire is that you know and you understand who your audience, like who your people are.
Right.
And you're not really focusing on grabbing those other people necessarily, because you understand both sides of the puzzle.
Yeah. And that goes back to talking about like who I feel like I am as a person.
Right.
Like I'm not the sales guy, and it's probably honestly hurt me in terms of the business side of things, right? I could have made a lot more money over the last few years by promising something that I couldn't guarantee to people.
Exactly.
And you see that every day more. I promise if you do my program, this is going to be better. No, I can't guarantee anything. I can tell you what to do and tell you how we can do it, and I can work with you on it. But ultimately in physical therapy, like, you as the patient are the one doing the work, right? And so if you're not doing the work, we're not going to get the result that you want. And so, and sometimes we do the work and it doesn't work, and we have to re-navigate and change the way we approach things. And that's part of it. That's part of it. And that's part of my motto of the fact that I can be a lot more hands-on and a lot more attentive, is we can navigate and move as we see things improving or not improving faster than you can in a traditional system.
Right. Because
you're looking at 30 people a day, or 20 a day, whatever the number is.
Yeah. And so just kind of take me through an average day, like of you really, because I mean, you're the one who owns the business. Just take me through a day. Man,
so, well, I'll take you through a typical day is I start typically at 8 o'clock in terms of like seeing patients. On occasion, I'll see somebody at 7 or 6 if I need to. If it's the right person who I know is committed to being there and showing up and doing the things, then I'm open to like bending over backwards for people who want to work, right? But typically, I have anywhere from 0 to 6 people in a day.
Okay.
6 hours of dedicated treatment time, physical treatment is a lot. When I first left core and I came to do my own job and opened this practice, I went from treating, I don't know, on average, probably 18 a day. Some days was double that. And here I am thinking, I'm going to treat, 8 people a day, 8 hours, 8 people. That's hard. That's harder than treating 30 a day.
Yeah.
Because you are diving in mentally and physically into each and every hour of the day. And so, so for the most part, I'm treating probably 4 to 5 people a day. And the time that I'm not treating those people, I'm doing other things, which is, I do digital programming for all my patients. So that means that when you come see me, we're spending the hour like actually working on you. like teaching you, doing some of the soft tissue things, all the things that people want to get.
Yeah.
You're getting that when you come see me every single time. And then for the most part, you don't need somebody to hold your hand to exercise if you're the right person for me. Right? If you have a fitness background, or you're just a motivated person who's going to do the work, then you don't need me to hold your hand to do the work. You just simply need to know what to do. And so you come in, you see me, we'll work together, and then the rest of my day is basically programming and managing programs for all my patients who are doing different things in different avenues. And when it's not those two things, which are my primary like patient care things, and it's like drumming up social media ideas, doing all the typical business day tasks, looking at bank accounts and, organizing myself. I mean, I'm always growing. I'm always trying to improve my systems and the way I do things, trying to look at how can I provide more value to my clients through my digital programming software, whether that's, different educational materials or just whatever it can be. And so that's a lot of what my day is spent doing in the clinic. And so the beauty of that is, I don't have to be in the clinic all day, every day. I can be at home doing some of those things, or, I have the Lincoln, my 1.5-year-old, if I need to go to work a little bit late to drop him off to school or pick him up or whatever it might be, then I have the flexibility to do those things, which is nice.
Yeah. And so what would be like your advice to those, who are thinking about going into physical therapy, or maybe they're in school right now for it?
My advice is, the first piece of advice is, go to whatever school's cheapest. All right. So
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, people like myself included, I chose St. Augustine because I wanted to go to the school that was manual therapy based. I could learn all these skills. Right. But it was a more expensive school. And if you ask me today, how much of my education from St. Augustine in terms of some of the manual things that I've learned there, am I actually doing? I mean, fractions. Right?
Yeah.
Most of what I'm doing are things that I learned once I graduated.
Right.
Continuing education courses, weekend seminars, all those types of things. And so, and not to mention, you learn clinically. You learn in the clinic with those around you that have done it for a longer period of time, that have more experience. And so, ultimately, go where it's cheapest. And then the second piece of advice is like don't be afraid to don't be afraid to say what you want and do what you want and treat the way you think you need to treat. I think we all get suckered into, this is the way it's always been done. This is what my job's going to look like. This is how I should do it. And that's not the case. There are a lot of people like me out there that are doing what I'm doing, cash services, and providing better, higher quality healthcare for people. I mean, people complain all the time about healthcare. Oh, I got to sit in the office. It took me 2 hours. I spent 5 minutes with whomever, the provider. I hate that this is how it is. Even physicians and physical therapists alike, they all have the same complaints as the patients, right? They don't like the system. So why are we all just adhering to it, Right. And so, if you want to open a practice and that's your goal going into physical therapy school, then come out of physical therapy school and open the sucker. It's not going to get any easier later on. It does, just because you're new, it doesn't mean you're incapable. And I think that sometimes we just, we're young and we're learning and we're trying to we want to go somewhere where we can be taught and be coddled, and that's great. I mean, I think there's definitely there's a huge benefit to going somewhere where there's an experienced therapist who you can lean on, right? But it doesn't mean you have to if you really have aspirations to do more.
Right.
And so that would be my biggest advice is shoot for the moon after you find the cheapest school. And then spend time always learning. Just never stop learning. Physical therapy and medicine is changing. The practice of medicine is called the practice of medicine for a reason. Science is always being questioned for a reason, right?
Right.
And so if we take what we learned in school today and we don't explore and we don't go look for new ways of doing things, and we're all just stagnant, and that's not fun. It's not exciting. And it's not what's best for the greater community.
Yeah. And so kind of moving on, it seems like you got everything going on with your place and it's going on the up. What kind of things do you have in store for the future or want to do for the future?
Man, so I've been at Lifted in the gym it'll be 3 years in June. So 2 years, 8 months or so.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a wonderful place for me. I've enjoyed being there. I'll always be a part of that community. But at some point, I do think there will be a time when it's time to build a clinic and have a space that, I can call my own, if you will. And
Right.
So I hope that happens in the future. That's, one part of it. I'd like to grow the business in some way, shape, or form. Right now, a lot of what I do is, the rehab side, and the recovery side is something that, I do that as well, but I think people don't recognize some of the recovery side of physical therapy that can occur. People think that you just need to be hurt to go see a physical therapist, and ultimately, physical therapists understand the body better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. It's our job to understand how to move, where the limitations are, and how you move. And so, whether you're a runner, a weightlifter, a CrossFitter, whatever your hobby is, like there's always ways to improve that, whether it be strength or flexibility or simply just like improving the mechanics of what you do. And so I think people don't realize that even if I'm not hurt, it doesn't mean I shouldn't have like a physical therapist in my corner who can help me, on a whim when I need to.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to have that recovery base of the business build a little bit in different ways, whether it's different types of equipment in the future or just improving that educational component for the community.
Right. And that sounds awesome. I'm super excited to see how that kind of unfolds and hope everything kind of works out for that. But going on, I know we kind of talked about this off camera, don't want to share too many details, but do you kind of want to talk about what we have planned for the future? I know you're the head of downtown, and we can kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about downtown. So, this all goes back to earlier talking about being in Morgan City and not being able to be overly involved. And so once I started my business, and we also touched on, like, I have a little bit more flexibility now than being in a clinic 8 to 5 every day. And so my goal was to find ways to get involved and find ways to help move Thibodaux forward, right? I think everyone can agree that Thibodaux has been traditionally a bit stagnant. Mm-hmm. For anyone that's moved away and come back, you wonder what the heck has changed.
Yeah.
And I did it in a 10-year span, and I came back and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I wasn't in a position in Morgan City to really help that, right? And so now that I am, my goal was to get more involved, and that's what I did. So I joined the Thibodaux Main Street Board downtown. I love our little downtown. I think it's a gym that is sorely underutilized. I worked at Johnny's all through college, so very familiar with the downtown area, and I just felt like, gosh, there's got to be more that we can do. And so I got on the board, and this is my 3rd year now, and my goal, and I think the board's overall goal, is to see downtown grow and change for the better, not just from a not just from like an event standpoint. I mean, all the events are fun, but like I want to see visible change, right? And so trying to be a part of the community and trying to develop better relationships throughout the community in order to try and drive that change is my little mission right now, outside of my own business.
Right.
And so we're in an exciting time. I think a lot of good things are to come, and I hope that over the next year or so, we get a lot better organized as a community. We get a lot. We work together, really. I think there's a lot of individual entities who are all working individually, trying to do those same goals.
Yeah.
But we're all better when we work together, right? In almost every scenario of life. So, my goal is to try and bring those people together and say, like, hey, you have this building, you want to do this, you have this business, you'd like to do this. Like, why don't we all sit down at the table and talk about how we can really create some change? Yeah. And move Thibodaux in a place that it's never been. And so, Now, I'm not running for mayor. Mayor Kevin Claymont, that is your job, buddy.
Yeah.
I do not want to go down that road. Politics is not in my future. I just hope that I can provide some perspective from my background being elsewhere, in my drive to like see things happen. I hate the bureaucracy of government and how long things take to happen. I want it to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn over the last couple of years that you have to be a little more patient. But yeah, so hopefully, we'll be able to bring more light to some of the businesses downtown. Yeah. We'll be able to share their stories a little bit in the future, and then see some visible change.
Yes, and I'm super excited, just for what the people at Thibodaux and people outside of Thibodaux will get to see about these businesses. And I think it's just going to be really exciting for the viewers to see for sure.
Yeah. So to be clear, we're probably going to, in the next couple months, I say probably we are in the next couple months, going to start a little series with some of the businesses downtown and hope to share their story like I shared mine today, and help to create a little bit more awareness of all the wonderful business people and businesses that are downtown specifically, to help drive more people down there. I mean, it's a beautiful little space. I'm a physical therapist, so I believe in being active and walking. And, unfortunately, in a city, which is kind of what downtown is by itself, you don't just like have a front row parking spot every time. You have to park and walk and enjoy, the buildings. They're beautiful, and sometimes the traffic's so hectic down there, it's hard to enjoy them, but it's really a cool spot. And
it has a lot to offer.
It has a lot to offer, man. There's a lot of people down there that are working their tails off to try and provide and have places for people locally to go, right, without having to go out to New Orleans or Baton Rouge or elsewhere. And we just need to support them as a local community.
And just having the opportunity to put the spotlight on them, I think that works out really well for them.
So I think so. I think it's going to be awesome.
Yep. And so kind of going into the closing, I ask this question for every guest. Blake, why do you enjoy life?
Man, I enjoy life. I try my best every day to find a way to make myself better and to make the people around me better. And lately, my enjoyments come from my little boy, Lincoln. We talked about earlier, they change your life, and he's changed it in many ways. But I was actually thinking earlier today, because he was having a rough morning. He was giving me a hard time. I was losing my patience a little bit. And I was just thinking about it as I drove him to school. I said, you know what? Like, if I told myself a year and a half ago before he was born that I could have one thing that was positive on my life 95% of the time, would I take it regardless?
Right.
I'd probably say yes, right? And that's what he's been for me is, there's those 5% times where it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
But by and large, like, he provides so much joy and excitement. And so lately he's been like my, greatest joy and enjoyment of life, and what's kind of helped me to have a different perspective on not just my life, not just his life, but all those around me who have kids and understand better, like what they go through on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of been like my greatest joy lately. But, bigger picture than that, man, I enjoy seeing people succeed. And so that's part of why, my business started, is because my goal in my business is to help people achieve a goal. Not just to feel better, but like, what's the bigger picture? For some people, it's running a marathon, and it's like, all right, I want to make you feel better to run the marathon, but I want to see you finish it, right?
Right.
And when I see my clients finish a marathon, finish a half marathon, lift a bunch of heavy weight that they haven't lifted before, or just move in a way that they haven't moved before, that's what makes me excited. That's what makes me enjoy life, and that's what makes me, continue to do this and go through the grind of owning a business every day.
Yeah. And I think that is a great answer. And I just want to thank you for kind of giving your experience, because I've never had someone related to therapy come on the podcast. And I'm also super excited for what we have to come with downtown. So thank you so much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here, man.
No problem. But we're going to wrap this episode up. Thank you guys so much for watching.